From the creators of Relevant Magazine, this is the Relevant Podcast.
It's Friday, March 13th. The year is 2020. You're listening to the Relevant Podcast. I'm your host, Tyler Huckabee. I'm coming at you from Nashville, Tennessee, down there in Orlando, Florida. He is the one in charge of keeping us on the rails today. He's got a busy calendar, but this is his top priority, I've been assured. It's our illustrious producer, Chandler Strang.
Hello.
Meanwhile, up there in Loveland, Virginia, he does not have a busy day today. He hasn't turned on the news for a week, so he's blissfully, he's really excited that it's Friday today. It's our friend Jesse Carey.
Hello.
And hey, we had such a good time that we couldn't say no again. We wanted to welcome back our friend, author, speaker, Kristen Howerton. Hi, Kristen.
How are you doing?
Oh.
Interesting question.
Yeah, can we just take a little at the top of the podcast? Should we kind of get some of this out of the way? It's been a weird week.
Yeah, well, let's do this real quick. Kristen, real quick, I have in my hand a copy of your book that is coming out in June. People can pre-order now, Rage Against the Minivan. People definitely need to check this out. It is awesome. I was super stoked when this showed up in the mail. And then Tyler, also later on the show, Eugene Cho, we have to talk about. He's got a new book that just came out, Thou Shalt Not Be a Jerk, A Christian's Guide to Engaging Politics. But yeah, I think we were just kind of chit-chatting, all three of us before, or all four of us before. I feel like we should probably just start with the kind of elephant in the room here and talk about what a crazy week this has been, right? I mean, there's no other way to kind of say it. I feel like everywhere you go, everyone's sort of having a variation of the same conversation. But man, it really is we're recording this on Friday, and the way the last couple of days have gone, who knows when people listen to this on Saturday or Sunday or Monday, what will have changed, how the world will look different. But I don't know about you guys, but I remember I was 18 years old on 9/11, and I remember that day, and I remember the feeling, and I remember the anxiety, and I remember the fear. And then I remember watching basketball on Wednesday night and watching players run off the court, and all of a sudden, it seemed like within a matter of a few hours, something that was sort of a news story that people were aware of, but might have been sort of on their peripheral, the spread of the coronavirus globally. All of a sudden, it became very, very real. And it looked like there was going to be some dramatic changes in the world. Kristen, where were you earlier this week when it seemed like, oh, man, this is something that we really need to be concerned about?
Well, I was on Twitter like a normal human. But it does feel what's different, because I agree there is that sense of like, wow, things are really getting real, like there was around 9/11. But, back then we didn't have the connectivity that we do today. And so I do feel like myself and a lot of other people were sort of hanging online. Like it's almost like we don't know what's happening, but we want to connect with other people and we want to hear what other people are thinking. But I think it was Wednesday night when really it was like, that's when Tom Hanks got it. That's when things started getting canceled. And you're like, oh, this is no longer a thing that's happening to other people. This is happening to us.
It seems like it's one of those things where there's been I wouldn't call it a false alarm, because I think that anytime there's something like this, it's smart for people to take it seriously. But you hear about potential pandemics a lot, and they miss you, or they don't end up being that big of a deal because there's a rally from the medical community and the government and to try to contain it as fast as possible. And it ends up being, it's easy to write those off as kind of as people being overly concerned or hyping it too big. And certainly there can be an inflamed media narrative around some of these things. I don't dismiss that. But also I think that speaks generally to how well prepared people tend to be and medical professionals are to try to get ahead of these things when possible. And for multifarious reasons, that just wasn't a possibility
Yeah, it's also, I feel like it's also kind of, Kristen, kind of leaning on something you were saying, that like instantly felt like, oh, this is a problem that a lot of other places in the world have dealt with, but now we are experiencing it. And even that is sobering to be like, it's easy to ignore problems when it feels like it is just facing other people far away in cultures that we don't fully, maybe appreciate or understand. And that's a sobering thing too. That's kind of a wake up call from all of this, is we should be just as concerned when something like this hits another country or another community as when it hits in our own backyard. And I think that's kind of a takeaway I've had too. It's like, oh man, it was a real, conviction of like, oh, man, I should be this concerned for other people. But now that it's, in our own backyard, now it really feels real. That's something that I've kind of been wrestling with too, it's put a perspective on how lack of my emotional investment in some of these global issues that I probably should feel more emotions for.
Well, and I think, it's interesting when you look at what's happening across the world. I think that there are a lot of Americans, and I think, there's many things that are great about Americans being so individualistic. We're the pioneers, or, we sort of see ourselves as these very,
cowboys.
Totally the cowboy thing. And while I'm sure there's some advantages to that, we are a more individualistic society than many. And we tend not to look at things from a collectivist standpoint. We tend to look at, if it's not affecting me, I'm cool. And the thing is, the response to this really needs to be collectivist. Like it has to be everyone saying, even though I may be young, I don't have risk factors, I'm not worried that I'm going to die of coronavirus, I'm going to be responsible knowing that I could then spread it to someone who would. And I think that's been a real shift and a real mindset change for a lot of Americans, moving from just thinking about how this affects me to I actually have to think about how this affects society. I have to give some things up. I may not get to go to my Rage Against the Machine show that I sat online for an hour getting good seats to,
That's a heartbreaker.
For example, I don't know. But there's big and small losses and inconveniences for everybody. Kids are having graduation canceled, but it's like, I don't know. It's weird in a way. It feels like my faith in humanity is being a little restored as I see people going, okay, we're going to do this. Like, we're going to give stuff up to make sure that other people are healthy.
Yeah. And I think that's it's a good sort of reframe, because it can feel very ominous to see the pictures of empty airport terminals and basketball stadium. Like, that's a very kind of chilling, it looks very post-apocalyptic, very like something out of a McCarthy novel. But that's actually, that's social solidarity. That's thousands and thousands, maybe millions of people making the right call for the benefit of their friends, their loved ones, and total strangers who they know need our help in protecting them. And it's a very, like you said, Kristen, it's a very, I think, Christian mindset to literally lay down your life for the sake of other people, to sacrifice, to show sacrificial love for those you don't know who will never have a chance to say thank you to you, for the hope that you can protect them. And I'm like you. I think it's obviously there's a lot of chill in the air when you see those things, and it's easy to feel like you're watching a zombie movie. But it's also, from a certain perspective, a very beautiful attitude that's being manifested mass scale.
Yeah. Because I think as of now, I think a lot of people are aware that it's very unlikely that they personally will, have really severe consequences, even if they contract this virus, right? I mean, we understand that, 80% of the cases, the symptoms remain mild. And in the other 20%, most of those, the fatality rate remains, very low. And I think this is anecdotal, but just from my kind of friends, family, and neighbors, there aren't a lot of people among them who are personally concerned about what would happen if they got this illness. The concern is everyone knows someone that, maybe have a condition that their immune system is slightly more compromised, or is elderly, or has underlying conditions. And like you guys were saying, I think that's what's been kind of cool to see is that everyone's concern is shifting to those people. You know, we know as of now, it seems like this virus, it doesn't really affect children too badly. It's you know, if you're reasonably young and healthy, it seems like that's something that's very manageable. But I think everyone's concern has shifted to, okay, how can we help the people that may not have the same, you know, in this case, privileges. It's a health privilege to be young and healthy. What can we do to help them? And I hope that stays the focus, because the where I think these things turn is when people get overly concerned about, you know, kind of siloing up their own loved ones at the expense of others. You know, you saw it when some people, I think it's a natural reaction to be like, oh, I got to go buy all the Purell I can so that I don't run out. But, or like, I got to order, you know, surgical mask or whatever. But then when you really think about it, it's like, okay, maybe that's not the right mindset. Maybe there are actual medical professionals that could benefit from those surgical masks rather than me just walking around the house with them, and just like taking a proper attitude to keep. Not that I've been doing that. Yeah, I was about to say, I do. Yeah. To be fair, I do that whenever I go on an ER binge. Okay, it helps me get into it.
So it seems like you're at home and you were wearing one when we started the recording. So
I was on an ER binge. I took a break.
Okay. It was confusing to me at first.
I'm back in like a really interesting McSteamy arc, and it just helps if I have the mask on to get into the show.
I'm glad you clarified that.
I do think those attitudes are beginning to shift, where it's like, okay, you know, this is about helping others not get this virus, not just how can I, you know, protect my own little tribe, you know.
Yeah, and I think that that's a attitude that will hopefully spread, but it because it will take a lot of solidarity for this to make a real dent. There can't be too many weak links in the chain. I saw. Did you all see that video go? It was on Twitter. Video going around there was a Post Malone show in Denver last night at Pepsi Arena. It was packed to the roof. It was all the way up, which is like not a great. And there was like obviously all sorts of like, well, you know, they're young, they're kid. Well, it doesn't matter. Like they're not the Post Malone fans are not generally in the 80-year-old age demographic. But that's the issue that we're going to have to get over.
I saw some 80-year-olds with face tats that said "always tired" that are big Post Malone fans. They were wise enough to steer clear.
I think it's going to be for some people, I think, and you know, this is sad to say, but you know, we just as Americans as a whole have not been super concerned with social justice issues. And this is, at the end of the day, not to be too preachy, but it is a social justice issue to say, you know, I'm not going to get infected, not because it's, you know, I'm concerned for myself, but I'm concerned for someone else. And, you know, to me, it is a little bit similar of like, you know, people watching young Black men being shot at a higher rate. And even if they don't have a Black son, being concerned that this is happening, even though it's not happening to the majority of people or not happening to them, but still being concerned, or being concerned that there's kids in cages, even though there's no chance my kid's going to be in a cage, but I still am concerned. You know, I think shifting that mindset in our country is hard. And I think it's going to be a little bit of a slow drip. Like, I think it's interesting where I look online to see where people stand on everything. Like, I feel like on Twitter, everyone's like, we've got to rally and do this together, right? And then on Facebook, some people are saying that, but then you've got a couple people saying like, everybody's just freaking out. I'm just going to live my life. And then I go to like Nextdoor or my neighborhood Facebook page, and it's like, this is all fake news. They're trying to make Trump look bad, you know? So I don't know. I think it's going to take some time for everyone to kind of come to the same page. Yeah. And I think there's a lot of us that have taken it upon ourselves to kind of like, you know, I don't know, share with our community, maybe like links and, you know, rationale, you know, trying to convince maybe our Fox News watching relatives, like, maybe we should take this seriously and do this for each other. Like, I think we're all sort of collectively trying to educate each other of like why we have to do this.
And I think that shift it's weird how this week has like evolved more rapidly. Like there were like on Thursday, it was like so we woke up in literally like it felt like we woke up in a different world, a different reality. Yeah. And I've even seen the attitude shift. And there was Tyler, you wrote a great response and a piece on the site that has been being passed around quite a bit. And there's a pastor, it's not worth, kind of naming names because I'm sure his mindset has shifted as a lot of people has as this virus has sort of come to our shores. But I want to say it was like on Monday, maybe, he had posted a video where he addressed his followers and, and basically said, hey, everyone stop freaking out. You're going to be just fine. This is only a disease that affects the elderly and people with compromised immune system. And you're going to be just fine. And then he ends the video with someone in a hazmat suit walking up to him and handing him a Corona beer. And as like the last gag, he takes it from the guy and starts drinking it. And and it was like, well, yeah, maybe this does mainly affect the elderly and people with compromised immune system. But that's the point. We're called to care for the least of these in our society. And in this case, the people who, are, the least of these in the sense that they're the most vulnerable. And, that should be the rallying cry, not that, hey, don't worry, everyone but these people. Well, what about the elderly people in his church? What about the families in his church that maybe have a child that has, some sort of health issue that they're at a particular risk? It's like that is cause for concern. It's like the attitude should be, well, I wish this would only affect healthy people and not the people who are already vulnerable, and he did take down the video and he posted another one, which is only honestly kind of marginally better. But
a huge improvement.
The attitude I do think is shifting to being like, no, just to be like, well, I'm not going to sweat it because I'm in my 30s and, I'm fine. That's the wrong approach. We really need to be concerned. Like you said, Kristen, this is a social justice issue. This is a time for the church to really kind of put its money where its mouth is in a big way and say, How are we going to help people? How are we going to use the gospel to convince people to do the right thing here? It's a real opportunity. I'm kind of nervous to see how it goes, but like you were saying, Kristen, there are communities out there online and networks of people who do seem pretty intent on doing the right thing here.
There are, but I will say I was very dismayed. Like a couple of my local megachurches were pretty late to cancel things and really only did so when our governor forced them to. And then even after that, they're like, okay, well, everybody get together in homes, like reach out to each other and let's all do home churches and we'll live stream. And it's just like, dude, no, how about everybody just stay in your own house? Like, let's take, I don't know, like I have been a little frustrated with what I have observed from just the small amount of churches in my community that I follow on Instagram. I don't know if churches, I feel like churches should be on the front line of doing this kind of education and, social responsibility modeling. I don't think they're there. Some of them, not all.
And even at my church last Sunday, again, seems like a different reality than right now.
It was, to be fair, it was.
But I mean, even then, I think, and all of us had the benefit of, I feel like we're pretty well-informed people professionally. We all write professionally. People look to us for opinions and are involved in,
That's on you all.
Yeah. And in journalism and stuff. So like, I remember being at church last Sunday and, during the meet and greet time, between, worship and preparing for the sermon, they were like, don't shake hands. But then when it came time, and I know this is probably a sensitive topic, but it came time for communion, and the way that the church that I go to, the tradition that they do is you go and you receive a wafer from an elder, and then you all dip it in a common chalice and you take the wafer. And obviously that is not the most sanitary approach. If you're looking to prevent the spread of germs, all dipping, no dipping. Wafer, with your bare hands that was given to you with someone else's bare hands who touched everything else. Like, and I made the decision I just told my wife, I was like, hey, listen, I don't think we can do communion when we get home. And I'm not, and I believe God protects, but I also believe he gives us wisdom. And two, like, I guess people who are maybe Catholic and believe in transconfiguration, I don't really fully understand the theology of that, believing that a supernatural occurrence happens, when you actually put the wafer and the wine into your mouth, that it actually becomes the blood and body of Christ. I don't know the implications for that theology, but I do know for my, Protestant theology, it's largely a symbolic act. And I don't think God is going to be angry if you use your discernment to be like, you know what, I might do this a different way. And that goes for any tradition, like attending a church in a room with 500 people. It might be time to be like, okay, God, I'm going to ask for a little grace here, and we might just do church online this week, Yeah.
And it's always important to remember that we don't go to church, we are the church. And these are very basic theological things that we all know, and that not attending a Sunday service. I was glad to see the church I've been going to here called off Sunday services throughout the rest of the month at least. And I would encourage some of the, I know there's can be a lot of complications, and it can be more difficult than it sounds to cancel church sometimes for some of the pastors and church leaders who are listening here. But it seems to me, from my vantage point, where I'm sitting right now as a non-medical expert, that it is the right call. And if you find some novel ways to continue getting people together in some sort of virtual setting from their homes, then I'd be interested to hear how that's going. We'd be interested to hear some of those cool stories. So that is the virus will come up again throughout the rest of this podcast. We don't want to spend the entire time on it, but like we said, we don't want to ignore it either, because I'm sure it's something that everybody's thinking about. And by the time you hear this, who knows how outdated our takes here are going to be. This is a very fast moving thing. So take it all with a grain of salt, especially if things have changed a lot over the course of editing this podcast together. We are going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're doing the hot list. Stay with us.
If you wanna go, then please don't stay. I know you wanna bow out, honey, so I will get in your way. And 1 and 3 made 4. You played it like I could wait all day. Your last became my game, so now I'm gonna wait.
You're listening to Anybody by Ultraista. All right, Jesse, do you figure me for kind of a chef, a foodie, a man about the kitchen?
I'll be honest, I typically do not. Unless you have some assistance, I typically would not picture you as someone who will be on a future season of Chef's Table.
Well, I'm probably gonna be on Chef's Table. Here's the thing. I like cooking, except for like the cooking part of it. I like the feeling of like putting everything into the bowl and mixing it up and seeing what comes out of it. Yeah. But that's the only part of cooking that I like. And I definitely don't like the go to the store part of it and having to spend like $30 for some sort of tin of spice that you need a teaspoon of and will rot in your cellar for the rest of your life.
And I refuse self-checkout, and as all these grocery stores move to self-checkout, it's another reason I don't want any part of a store in my grocery experience. Tyler, I wish there was a product that would come directly to your house.
This is why it is. This worked really well for me. So HelloFresh takes out it's exactly what I want out of the cooking experience and no more. So it sends me everything I need, so I don't have to worry about finding time for the store or dealing with confusing measurements. It's all prepackaged and the right measurements, so you can just dump it in. I can just do the fun part, and then I get to enjoy healthy, delicious meals. You can break out of your dinner rut too with HelloFresh's over 22 seasonal chef-curated recipes each week. There's really something for everyone. There's including low-calorie, there's vegetarian, there's family-friendly recipes every week. Now me, when they gave me a little sample of this, I made delicious Gouda burgers and fries that were very good. Wow. I made some cheesy beef tostadas. They were also excellent. And even a chicken pasta dish. It was a huge hit in my household. I didn't tell anybody that I had some help in this one. They just thought I was a great chef.
Well, I'm legit getting hungry right now.
I'm getting hungry too. I can't wait to try it again. It really did save a lot of time. I didn't have to worry about like meal planning and prepping. I just got to enjoy cooking and getting dinner on the table. It didn't even take me 30 minutes. You can even do 20 minutes. They have these quick recipe options that you can really cut down on time if you're pressed. And this is really important to a lot of our listeners, sustainable too. I'm not wasting a lot of food and ingredients for just one special dish. Even the packaging that HelloFresh uses to ship the food is almost entirely made from recyclable and or already recycled content. Their carbon footprint is actually 25% lower than store-bought grocery meals. So you're eating good meals and you're doing something good for the environment too, which is nice. And this is a big one, it's flexible. You can change your delivery days or your food preferences. You can skip a week if you need to, if you're heading out of town for a little bit. No problem, no questions asked. And right now, Relevant Podcast listeners can get a special deal. You can get 10 free meals along with free shipping with a purchase. Just use Relevant 10 to get 10 free meals, including shipping with HelloFresh. Go to www.hellofresh.com/relevant10. Once again, use code relevant and the number 10 to get 10 free meals, including free shipping at www.hellofresh.com/relevant10. Jesse, you got to go right now. You got to get on it.
10 free meals. That is seriously a very, very generous deal.
I'm all over it. I'm way ahead of you. Yeah. I can't wait. I'm going to get more of those cheesy beef tostadas in me. At the beginning of the podcast, you heard Kawasaki Backflip by Dogleg.
Kristen, don't you think he makes half these up?
I do. I do.
I just use a word generator and then I send Chandler on a wild goose chase.
because I mean, Kristen, you just bought tickets to a Rage Against the Machine show. I do this podcast. I'm part of a culture magazine. It seems like we're two people who are relatively in tune to good music. Kawasaki Backflip by a band called Dogleg just sounds fake. I think it does. I think he just made it.
I just like to send Chandler out running around for this music that doesn't exist. I just like to hear. I enjoy the hunt. I cause trouble. All right, time for our weekly look back at our top 5 stories at the intersection of faith and culture that came this week. It's time for
It's the hot list. The hot list. It's sizzling.
Our number 5 this week, back on this beat, Bethel Church is advising faith healers to stay away from local hospitals. Okay, so Bethel Church, one of the largest institutions in Northern California, is advising its own members to take strict precautions in the coming weeks and months, including advising its members to stay away from local hospitals to stop the common Bethel practice of offering to lay hands on sick people and pray for healing. Aaron Tesaro, the church spokesman, explained, quote, "Through email communications, signage, and church announcements, we are actively encouraging health practices and precautions to our whole community. We believe that wisdom, modern medicine, and faith are meant to work together and express the value for each in the pursuit of continued health and healing." As the Sacramento Bee notes, plenty of critical skeptics have enjoyed the irony of a church opting out of offering to heal sick people during a global health emergency. Bethel Church was sort of caught in a no-win PR situation where they would have fielded criticism no matter their official response. Tesaro says the church sees a balance between bold faith and precautions. He said, quote, "Healing happens, but it's foolish to take unnecessary risks with your health and the health of others. Though we believe in a God who actively heals today, students are not being encouraged to visit healthcare settings at this time, and moreover, are taught that even under normal circumstances, they must receive permission from both the facility and the individual before engaging in prayer." All right.
There's a lot to unpack here, and
there's a lot there.
And here's the specific question. I want to hear both of your opinions. And Kristen, maybe we can start with you. I have a somewhat conflicted relationship with healing. I believe God can do whatever he wants. And I believe it is good to pray for people who are ill, but not just pray for them, to help heal them in a variety of ways. And if God wants to supernaturally heal them, I believe he can. I also understand the wisdom and the discretion that they're exercising here, and I think it's wise. I guess my question for you guys is like, in the Bible, Jesus intentionally went and ministered among lepers, people who had a very contagious disease of the time that a lot of people were afraid of. And I guess like part of what I've been thinking about, especially when I read this story, is obviously I agree with him that it's probably better to not do this practice right now. But then I read that Bible story and I'm like, I don't know. Do I really believe the Bible? Like, do I really believe in that Jesus, because if I was a follower of Jesus back then, I'd be like, hey, dude, it's probably putting the community at risk ministering to lepers. Kristen, let me start with you. What's your kind of response to this story, especially kind of in light of a parallel situation that we read about in the gospel?
Yeah, I will say this. I think that there is an opportunity to kind of snark on Bethel of like, oh, you guys thought, you could heal people and now you can't. Or, I think saw some memes about like them, sending people away from their healing rooms. But I want to say, I do think this is the right thing for Bethel to do. And I think it was probably a hard call because they probably knew they'd get some of that criticism or the cynicism around that. But I think it was the responsible call. And I think that this is a situation as this virus kind of takes hold in our country, we're going to know people that are affected by this. And this is one of those situations that I think can really be a test of faith, because if you have grown up in a religious tradition where, and a lot of us have, whether it was implicitly stated or just sort of, implied, a lot of us grew up in a religious tradition that said, if you pray with enough faith, God will heal you. And I don't believe that is true. I've had situations in my own life where I've, lost pregnancies and laid prostrate on the floor, and, healing hasn't come. Or I've had a friend with cancer who was so full of faith, and so I think these are difficult times because, I think God can heal, but I also think he doesn't always. I mean, it's interesting. My kids just watched a movie last weekend called Breakthrough. It's a Christian movie. A kid falls through the ice and they get enough people to pray for him and he wakes up. And like, I feel like at the end of the movie, I had to sit my kids down and be like, that can happen. And then sometimes amazing, faithful people can have terrible things happen to them, and God is still good and God is still real, And I think that this is going to be one of those testing spots, like situations, because, is God going to come in and sweep this whole thing out? I don't know. I don't think so. So there's going to be a lot of loss, and I don't think we can pray this whole thing away.
Yeah, Kristen, it kind of reminds me of like the Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego story. I think I got them right. I think I got those three.
Sounds good.
Right.
You just sing the song to make sure you're getting it correct.
Yeah. That this next song is by Kawasaki Flip by Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. No, but it's like, where they look at the ruler who threw them into the fiery furnace, and it says, our God will deliver us, but even if he doesn't, we won't bow. And I think that's sort of the attitude that we have to have when it comes to something like healing, is like, look, this isn't a deal breaker here. God's still God. It's just he will either choose to do this or he won't. But even if he doesn't, even if his choice isn't what I want it to be, will we still serve? And I think that's sort of the approach that we need to take. But I do think Bethel made the right decision here in kind of just taking the advisement of the medical community. And it doesn't mean you can't pray for people who are suffering. It just means, maybe.
Should. I hope people are.
Yeah.
Yes,
exactly.
from your home.
I'm sure Bethel is. If I know anything about that church, they are still there. That's a praying church up there. And just because they're not doing it in hospitals doesn't change that.
Yeah.
Number 4 this week. This is a different
feels weird. It feels weird to talk about anything but coronavirus, but we have a couple that are non-corona.
This is a shift. Motley Crue drummer Tommy Lee had a very intense inspirational message for David Crowder. Okay, so a week after posting, this is a buckle up.
This is a palate cleanser. Okay,
this is an ongoing. This is a developing story, I think.
The world's still turning out there. Yeah.
So a week after that, last week, I think we talked about this. After posting a bizarre message. After David Crowder on social media posted a bizarre message from Gary Busey, in which Busey pled for David Crowder to return his phone call, Crowder has shared another video message. This one is from Tommy Lee. In it, Lee asks Crowder to stop texting him and offers a profanity-laced pep talk. It's very strange. Here is a bleeped clip.
Yo, Crowder, stop texting me, dude. For real. I get it, bro. Listen, Mondays are the worst. But you're the best and you got it. You got the shit, dude. Your boy is here to motivate you, man. Remember when we bought the whole Taco Bell menu? That shit was eternal. This week is yours, dude. Go get it, champ. What's up?
So now it's possible, obviously, that Crowder has a group of semi-celebrity best friends who regularly send him video messages. It's also possible, I dare say even likely, that Cameo, the service that lets you pay to have various celebrities leave you custom video messages, is being used here as sort of a meta prank. I would say that's possible as well. It seems.
Do you think Crowder's like paying them himself, or other people?
I don't know.
Or is he using? I don't know what's going
Kristen,
on.
have you ever met David Crowder?
I'm trying to think if I have. It's likely because I have a friend who used to produce his shows. But I want to say, didn't David Crowder do an odd tour last year that was like really off with Franklin Graham, I want to say?
Oh, yeah. I forgot.
I think he did. I think he like was at least part, maybe either an event. It might not have been a tour. Yeah. It might have been like a one-day situation.
I just remember, I always liked Dave Crowder, and I just remember
he's a good musician.
Last year being like, oh.
Yeah. And I think, and this isn't me, trust me, this is not me defending Franklin Graham. I don't want, let me go on record.
Oh, okay. We've got a Franklin.
No. Let me go on record with that.
Loud and clear. Franklin Graham apologist.
No. But I think, From my understanding, slightly, and this isn't an excuse for David Crowder still, giving his support even just by proxy to Graham after some of the many inflammatory things Franklin Graham has said. And it was our reporting earlier that calls Franklin Graham, there's a little behind the scenes here. Samaritan Purse had been a sponsor, had an advertiser of Relevant for years. But since he started saying inflammatory things, and we started rightly reporting on it, they severed their advertising relationship with us. And so I want to kind of put that out there that I think there are certainly times to hold his feet to the fire. But I think from my understanding, Crowder had a pre-existing relationship with Graham centered around Samaritan's Purse. And the work they do. Now, I'm not saying that's an excuse to not be like, hey, dude, if you're going to say insane stuff on, that's inflammatory, that I should distance myself. I think you probably should. But I do think they had some manner of pre-existing relationship based around the work of Samaritan's Purse. But I also say David Crowder is one of the weirdest, like, kind of moving targets
he's a weird guy.
Go ahead.
Would say this to his face.
Yeah, exactly. I found it. Here's what it was. It was Franklin Graham's Decision America Northeast tour that Dave Crowder was on. And it was political.
Oh, well, it's like, what's the decision? I have a feeling I'm not going to agree with it.
I'm gonna guess it's for the man that God has appointed. I don't know if you've heard.
For God's special boy.
Yes, God's special problematic boy.
But here's the thing. Maybe he is just kind of like doing kind of weird, prank videos with Cameo, and has just chosen Gary Busey and Tommy Lee because they're
so random.
Funny. Yeah,
two random dudes.
It also wouldn't surprise. I feel like that's more plausible than what I'm going to suggest. Yeah. But I don't feel like it's completely outside the realm of plausibility that David Crowder is the type of guy who counts among his friends both Franklin Graham and like Louis Giglio, as well. He was involved with Passion City, as well as Tommy Lee and Gary Busey. If Crowder was legitimately friends with all of those people, that's would not brand. Shock me. Yeah. Yeah,
that's totally on brand. I mean, Tommy Lee, Gary Busey, and Dave Crowder, all, if you saw them on the street, you might think they were homeless. So they do all have that in common.
That's a good point. They all have the same energy, the same chaotic, the same chaotic neutral energy that anything could happen. Any of these guys can do anything from commit a crime in public to an
act of heroism that we would not believe. If they all possess some weird superhuman ability, it wouldn't shock me all that much. They got this kind of squirrely, hard to pin down energy that I just think they're buds. That's my hope.
I think they are too. I think they're weirdo buds.
Tommy Lee is somebody that I used to see around back in the Lincoln, Nebraska days, because he was filming his reality TV show, Tommy Lee Goes to College, in which he became a student at the University of Nebraska in Lincoln. And lived in the dorm, had a roommate, and just walked around college. And then you'd see him out at the nightlife doing the hanging out with other college kids. When he was probably, I don't know, in his 40s. This was
of course.
I don't think this would happen today. I don't think this would. You don't want Tommy Lee on your college campus. Talk about needing to quarantine people.
All right, quick question. In your guys' college experience, did you have like that one person in their dorms that was a college student but was in their 40s, but instead of just deciding to re-enroll in school in like an adult education program, they lived in the dorms? Did anyone have that? Because there was like a couple dudes in their 40s that were living in my dorms, like at college. And I can only imagine how weird it would be if one of those people was Tommy Lee. Like, I feel like it would even if I barely ran into him, it would dramatically change my college experience just to know that he was present. Did you guys have some of those like older residents in your dorms?
Students, I think they were called.
I mean, I did, but I went to a Bible college, so these students in their 40s could not have been more different than Tommy Lee. So
literally the exact opposite in every way.
Same age, different energy.
Opposite.
Yeah. I remember there was one guy who was I don't know if he was 40, but he was definitely in his 30s, and he had I think he had come from Israel. I think he'd fought in the army. Like he had lived a lot of life before he decided to come live with a bunch of 18-year-olds at Moody Bible Institute in Chicago. And I just can't imagine what it was like to be watching toilet paper pranks after having seen like people die in battle. And that must have been a very strange, but not unwelcome. Kind of different new phase of life.
Where Tommy Lee toilet paper pranks are like, I've seen
sweet summer children.
Totally.
Oh wow, you drank 6 whole beers. Wow, you guys are.
I call that morning coffee.
Yeah. All right, number 3 this week. This company will pay someone $1,000 to watch The Office for 15 hours. Okay, I have a take on this. First, I'll read you the whole story. So, we're approaching the 15th anniversary of the debut of The Office. And to celebrate, usdish.com is sponsoring a contest for the gig of a lifetime. One lucky winner will get $1,000, a Netflix gift card, and some Office swag in exchange for watching 15 hours of the show. From UDish, quote, here's the lowdown. The person who lands the gig will have 9 days to watch 15 hours of The Office. That's about 45 episodes. As you're watching, you'll need to complete a checklist that tallies the number of common tropes that occur throughout each episode. The deadline to apply for this is March 16th. All right.
Yeah.
That's the situation. My take on this is, I know it sounds like a dream job. I know we made it sound kind of good in there. My take is that $1,000 for 15 hours of work is not a good deal. You got to know your worth in this economy.
Well,
don't submit to this sort of this like, ooh, you get to watch TV for 15 hours.
I'm calling
$1,000. $1,000 isn't going to do it.
Do you know how many times I've watched 15 hours of The Office over a course of 9 days? Probably more than I can count. I watch The Office all the time, and I guarantee you I've watched it more. My problem is if it's $1,000, it's got to be way harder. Okay, listen, Kristen, I don't know if you know this about me, but a few years ago, I undertook a pop culture endurance challenge. Where
I did not know this.
And sadly, this will be with my children. Google me. It doesn't matter what I do, unless I like run for a high political office and do something crazy. This is what will come up when my children Google me later in life to see what their father's legacy was. I listened to Nickelback for 148 hours straight without taking a break.
On purpose?
On purpose. And it was to raise money for Charity Water.
Oh, okay. That's acceptable.
Yeah, because I didn't think it was impressive when people, basically I set it up by this. I didn't think it was impressive when people like, hey, I'm going to do Kilimanjaro or run a marathon. It's like, okay, I've seen that 1,000 times. Do something that's impressive. So I undertook that challenge and unfortunately got a lot of uncomfortable media coverage. And I had literally the band Nickelback very upset with me. To this day, they're still very upset about that joke.
You guys haven't patched up.
No, and
he had some. Chad Kroeger had some choice language for you, if I recall.
Very
right?
choice language.
We can't repeat it on this
national radio
podcast.
broadcast. but the thing about this is like this is too easy. Like if you're gonna do a contest, make it hard. Make it watch only Scott's Tots, only the most cringeworthy episodes. Watch that for 15 hours. That's earning $1,000. Like, just
but it sounds like there's homework involved. That part, I don't like that part. Like you should just be able to watch it.
That's your labor. That's your labor. We need the people at US Dish to unionize. We need them to drive up. We need to tell the man to give you what you deserve.
I have to say I agree. I agree on that. It's not enough money.
My thing is like it's only enough money if it's harder. Like if they want to because like I said, 15 hours in the office. Do you guys I still regularly will fire up the office. Am I alone, Kristen? Are you an office watcher?
I am, and it's funny because I watched the whole thing and then I watched it again with my children. So yes, we're an Office family.
I think that if it was The Office isn't kind of an optimal show for this because you can kind of just put it on in the background. Yeah. I think that doing the writing part of it, like actually having to list out the tropes, I don't totally understand what they mean by that, but that seems like that would make this more of a labor than I want it to be. Whereas if it was like 15 hours of Mad Men or something where there's actually a lot more to analyze and dissect, or if any one of the True Detective, one of those shows that's got a lot going on, that seems like a little more of an easy part. This one, what are you gonna do? Like Michael being a jerk again? I don't understand what they're asking me to do, which is why I want to be paid more.
I think if this was really made interesting, it wouldn't be The Office, some obscure sitcom that, has 15 hours of content that most people have forgotten about, like Caroline in the City. Like, remember that show?
That's yeah.
But I'm just saying, just grab some rando show from like the late 90s and be like, oh, all right, you're in for 15 hours of Alf, or, Major Dad, about a comedy about a emotionally distant military father. Enjoy 15 hours. Like that's that's what I want to see. Sit him down with Coach for a while, 15 hours of Wings.
I have a theory that how every now and then, like our generation or Gen Z will kind of rediscover an old sitcom from the pet, like one will just pop up for no reason, and all of a sudden everybody's watching it. And I have a theory about what the next one is going to be. This came to me in a flash, and then I woke up with this, like a word from God. Who can say? But I think the answer is dinosaurs. I think that dinosaurs, the old weird with the puppets, the animatronic, it was like a sitcom. I'm the baby. I think that is going to it's going to have a day before the end of the world. I think that day is coming on pretty quick. We're going to all be watching a lot of TV over the next few weeks.
We are.
So I think dinosaurs is going to find a season somewhere there. I'm saying it now. Again, this is a fast-moving situation.
Into the world.
It's a good show. It's a pretty good show. It's got there's a lot to love there.
Yeah.
All right, number 2 this week, we got a new look at Pixar's upcoming film about the afterlife called Soul. So Soul is the next offering from Pixar, and this one harkens from the studio's more experimental philosophical wing. It comes from Pete Docter. He's the guy behind Monsters, Inc., Up, and Inside Out. This movie looks like kind of a similarly trippy adventure through space and time that aims to stretch the bounds of children's entertainment via a surprisingly mature premise. A protagonist, voiced by Jamie Foxx, suddenly passes away on the best day of his life and must navigate the perils of the afterlife. Obviously, this particular look at the afterlife doesn't look overly informed by the Bible or anything, but Doctor's interest here looks more metaphoric than literal. A look not just at what happens when we die, but what makes us who we are while we're still alive. Doctor explained to Entertainment Weekly, quote, "We talked to a lot of folks that represented religious traditions and cultural traditions and asked, what do you think a soul is? All of them said vaporous and ethereal and non-physical. We were like, great, how do we do this? We're used to toys, cars, things that are much more substantial and easily referenced. This was a huge challenge, but I got to say, I think the team really put some cool stuff together that's really indicative of those words, but also relatable." That trailer is posted online, and this one I got excited just watching it, not just because of the cool premise. I'm obviously interested to see what they do with this one, but the visuals were so interesting and so like weird and trying to illustrate something like what they're doing, you couldn't ask for a better studio to try to put something like that together. I'm excited to see where they go with this.
Kristen, are you a Pixar fan?
Oh boy. Actually,
you know what? Take coming.
Hot take Friday.
But it's like, it's a take that I'm a little embarrassed of. Like, this isn't one that I'm super proud of. I have a hard time with movies with talking animals, for one. Like, that's a whole thing.
Okay, that's fine.
Or where it's like, I don't know, like non-human being. I don't know. Like, I never saw Inside Out. I never saw Up. I probably won't see this. I have some weird thing where I really like realism.
Yeah.
And but I like fantasy in some aspects. And I get really weird when the kid movies get super like existential. I don't know.
So this is not in any way, shape, or form a Kristen Howerton movie.
This is not my genre. My kids will watch it, and I'll go somewhere else.
It's so funny you say that, Kristen, because like the other day, my daughter, who's 4, was using a Coco coloring book, and Coco's another Disney Pixar movie about the afterlife, right?
Yes.
And she's like coloring pictures and like commenting on her favorite characters, and I'm like looking at and I have no like moral or opposition to the film. I just was like, it just seemed weird that like, oh, a 4-year-old is this is the entertainment is about death and the afterlife. I have no opposition to it. It's just like,
I don't either. I just have there is some weird like glitch in me. This is completely personal. My kids love these movies. I've always, and I've been like this since I was a child. I didn't watch cartoons as a child. I was very uncomfortable with Tom and Jerry. When the anvil fell on someone, I was just like, I'm out. I can't handle it.
Here's what question I have for you though, Kristen, because you say that realism is the barrier, like the lack of realism is part of the barrier. But aren't you a fan of musical theater? Like of stories that are perpetuated by people randomly breaking into song, like conflicts are resolved or communicated by complex choreographed song and dance. Now, I'm not saying that wouldn't be a real world that would be fun to live in. I'm sure, seeing 5 chimney sweeps backflip down your street, singing about, whatever they sing about would be pretty cool. But I don't know if your issue is realism. I think it's just the anthropomorphic thing, right?
This is a completely fair call out, and I accept it. It makes no sense because I can totally suspend disbelief for people breaking into song and dance. I can totally do it. So I don't know. I have some weird thing about things that shouldn't be talking, and it makes no sense.
I see.
But let me say this about Soul. Here's a really random fact, though. Do you know who did the music?
No.
Trent Reznor of Nine Inch Nails.
Whoa. Well, now you gotta see it.
I might have to see it.
You're in a double bind.
I'm in a double bind. I'm going to pray about it.
That's crazy. It's Trent Reznor, because I know Trent Reznor is done. He does like the David Fincher movies, but David Fincher movies are moved
very
into a
dark.
soundtrack.
Yeah.
But you know what I'm saying? Like if I watch a Fincher movie, it's like, well, this is probably going to be scored by Trent Reznor. Like it's going to have dark and it's going to have those kind of like that industrial sort of mood to it. Even Social Network had this kind of ominous like tech sound to it. I would not picture him on a Pixar movie, but that does make me want to see it much more than I do now.
It actually makes me want to see it too.
Lead with that. Push that one. I've been writing about this movie. I didn't know Trent Reznor did it.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, all right. I'll be there. I'll be there opening day. Number 1 this week, Louis Giglio reminds his Instagram followers about God's peace. So Passion City Church, Louis Giglio, took to Instagram today to not only announce that the church would be moving online this week, but he offered some encouragement for this time to his churchgoers and to Christians everywhere. Here is a clip.
I just wanted to remind us today that our God is in control. All through time and history and through our lives, there have been times when it looked like everything was completely out of control. But there's never been a moment that our God wasn't a loving God sitting on a throne who had a purpose and a plan for your life and for this world. And I just want us to remember that His Word says He will keep in perfect peace the one whose mind is stayed on Him. So let's keep our eyes on Jesus today. Let's keep our minds fixed on Him today. And let's keep our hope and our confidence alive today that our God has a purpose and a plan, and He is sovereign in all of this.
I wanted to end the hot list. That was number one item. And I looked on Instagram kind of all morning to find a somewhat trusted voice that was hopefully saying something encouraging. I saw a couple pastors that were encouraging people to still come to church on Sunday, which I don't know if is the most responsible thing, but I thought it was, nice of Louis to kind of end this message by telling people that, to attend church online this week. But the idea that he brings up of God's sovereignty, of God is in control, that's always an interesting thing to think about in times like this, because it's like, God is obviously, we believe that God can control things and is sovereign, but also he's not like a marionette who's pulling the puppet strings. And, that's a tough thing to wrestle with. Both of you guys, I didn't go to Bible school. Both of you guys did. How do you think about the idea? And I know we're already 50 minutes into this, so we don't have to, dive down too deep of a theological rabbit hole. But how do you guys make sense of an idea like sovereignty when it seems like there's such a lack of control in the world around us?
Yeah.
I'm glad you asked that, Jesse, because I have the perfect answer for it. I'm just kidding. I do not. It's an important question. I don't know.
Listen, I thought you both went to Bible school.
I'm
this
sorry.
should be a very no.
But you know what I think? I think more than Bible college, which I don't know, may have hindered my faith in many ways. Actually, ironically, but I think this idea of sovereignty to me, I feel like I have learned more from travel and exposure to the world and it's funny, my boyfriend and I were talking about this just last night. Like, this is the first time in our lifetime that we've had something that has just been really traumatic, like affecting us, right? We haven't lived through a war. We haven't lived through a famine, but it's like when you really travel the world and you see countries where pain and suffering are a constant. And I think this is one of those sad reasons that people go on mission trips and say, I met the face of Jesus in an African child. But in reality, it's because you've walked into a situation where people are living in difficult circumstances and they're still able to see that God is faithful, that God is sovereign. And I think there is some American privilege at play when our faith is shaken because hard things happen, because I think in many places in the world, hard things are just a part of life. And, we live in a time and a place and an era where we can avoid hardships like for decades, and then when hardships come, we're all like, well, is God still good? And of course he is. But, I think some of our privilege of living without a lot of pain puts us in a place of question when it comes.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that's really true.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's like we were talking about earlier. It's a reminder of the privilege that we have to live by no doing of our own. A lot of us were born healthy, born into the wealthiest country in the history of the world. And it's easy to lose perspective that not only do most of our fellow, humans that we share this planet with, not only do they not afforded these privileges, most of the people who ever walked on this earth weren't either. And right. I do feel like this is a moment to kind of grab some of that perspective and say, yes, God is in control, but that control looks a lot different than we think it does because we see it through the lens of people who have had every need provided for and have had no reasons to all of the reasons. I think the other thing too is like a lot of anxieties that people have, in their day-to-day lives in this week might seem kind of trivial. And even that to recognize is like, no, that's we've been pretty privileged. If, the major thing I was worrying about on last Friday this time, like the big thing on my mind it's not even on my radar right now. Like it seems
totally.
Like, and so I do think when we talk about God's control, it's important to keep that perspective of like, look, man, our life is a vapor, there's a bigger thing at play here. And that's what we kind of need to rest in. And so, yeah, it's a complicated thing, but Kristen, I think you articulated it really well.
I think that I was talking to my wife. Anxiety is part of her story and part of her life. She has anxiety, and it'll be something that she has to deal with for the rest of her life. And she was reflecting on how these past couple of days she feels like everybody is getting a chance to see what it's like to be her all the time. Because she says the panic, or whatever we would call it, the narrative is very much this is her normal. Mm-hmm. And that was interesting for me because I've realized it helps me realize how much she is always trusting to God, and what that means on a practical level is really hard to say. I don't know. And I think, like you both said, we have very little experience in having to do that, other than obviously people who have experienced deep personal tragedy at some point, which is a number of our listeners certainly have. So I think I've had to, for myself at least, just focus on the things that we do know, what God has called us to do, which is compassion, caring for others, laying down our lives, and loving our neighbor as ourselves. And that's something we can do very explicitly and very practically right now. There's a lot of ways to do that. Checking in with older folks, people who might be unduly in danger because of this. And I know that we've talked about this at length, and hopefully by now there's been people who are a lot better than me at talking about this. But it's my wife who's been helpful in showing me just how realistic, just how important it is to put this all in perspective. And you all are helping me too. So thanks, y'all. We are going to take a quick break. When we come back, Eugene Cho joins us.
Music on the windscreen of my dreams. Music in the dark end of the street. Every time there's music, it's gotta be all or nothing at all. Yeah. Turn it up, turn it up, turn it up, and I'll be there.
You're listening to Music by Peter, Bjorn, and John. Well, this episode is brought to you by Bombas. You do a lot of different things to stay active, so Bombas made a lot of different performance socks designed for everything from running to hiking to cycling and more. Whether you're very into sports or planning on getting very into sports, Bombas can help with performance socks in styles made specifically for basketball, tennis, running, golf, and more. They're made with a lightweight poly cotton blend, which means no matter how hard you're working, your feet will stay cool, dry, and comfortable, never sweaty. Bombas socks provide support in places you didn't even know you needed, like your arches. Each sock is built with a special arch support system that's supportive but not too tight, like a nice hug, but on your foot. A foot hug. Constantly pausing your treadmill to adjust twisted, bunched up socks is enough to make anyone ready to quit. That's why Bombas are designed with left-right contouring and a Y-stitch teal, so they stay perfectly in place. Ever notice that annoying toe seam most socks have? That little ridge on the top? Bombas got rid of it. Gone. Dunzo. It's just smooth sailing all the way across the top of your foot. Did you know that socks are the #1 most requested item in homeless shelters? Bombas socks were created to change that. For every pair you buy, Bombas donates a pair to someone in need. So go to bombas.com/relevant today and get 20% off your first purchase. That's Bombas, BOMBAS.com/relevant for 20% off. Bombas.com/relevant. Well, Eugene Cho is the founder and former senior pastor of Quest Church. He's an urban and multicultural, multi-generational church in Seattle. He's also the founder and visionary of 1 Day's Wages. It's a grassroots movement of people, stories, and actions to alleviate extreme global poverty. And he is also the new president of Bread for the World, a huge and very, very cool nonprofit that aims at alleviating global hunger. Congratulations to Eugene on that very cool position, and to the whole organization for getting a great president. In Eugene's latest book, Thou Shalt Not Be a Jerk, A Christian's Guide to Engaging Politics, he discusses the ways that Christians can be civil in non-civil times. Unfortunately, this conversation just doesn't have a lot of relevance right now to our current day and age, Jesse. There's just no real immediate practical application to learning how to not be a jerk about politics for Christians. I'm not even sure why we're talking about this.
It's one of the best, books in terms of like a current felt need that, you know what I mean?
No kidding. It's the one thing that's kind of like, it's part of everything. Like the din of this is in all of our conversations in 2020, you know, right? So it's extremely practical, and you couldn't ask for a better guy to go through all of this than Eugene Cho, who is such a wise and obviously intelligent, but also just very compassionate person. And I wanted to ask him about, because I think, Jesse, you and I have probably noticed in our own, some of our writing about this over on the site, is how quickly you get accused of being divisive when you talk about politics when you're a Christian. It's a very frequent accusation, like, why do you have to be divisive by bringing up things like maybe race or inequality, whether it be gender or class or ethnicity. So I wanted to ask him how Christians should feel about that label of being divisive. And here's what he had to say.
You know, I think when someone gives a criticism like you're being divisive, Eugene, I don't want to just ignore it. I think we should respond and take to heart criticisms that we get, particularly from the body of Christ, and even those outside the larger body of Christ. I think we live in a culture where there's just so much anger and outrage that maybe we become desensitized or apathetic to it, and we don't take to heart some of the criticism that we're getting. But having said that, you know, I think when sometimes people bring up you're being divisive and you're disrupting peace, I sometimes gently try to pastorally push back because I want to have a conversation, right? And I want to push back with the question, is there a difference between peacemaking and peacekeeping? And sometimes I think peacekeeping might be, if we're, going to be blunt, it might be a voice in our head that says, you know what, things are working well for me, let's keep the peace. Whereas peacemaking, I think, has some sort of a courage, some sort of a prophetic power to be able to examine that it might work for some, but because politics is governance for all, that we need to be mindful of others. And then particularly for us as Christians, what does it mean for us as followers of Christ to be formed and transformed by the ethics of Christ embodied in God's word and his ministry?
And I think that's something I've thought about a lot, and he articulated it much better than I've ever been able to, that difference between peacekeeping and peacemaking. It's easy and tempting to label just not wanting to be uncomfortable as being a peacekeeper. You just don't want to face the realities of the potential need for changes to the status quo. The idea of peacemaking, much more difficult, takes a lot more courage, takes a lot more being willing to be made uncomfortable, but there's a lot more potential fruit in doing things like that too, Yeah,
absolutely. It's so hard to sometimes walk a line of political conviction, but also want to create some unity. And that's why I think, what Eugene says is so interesting, because he does try to walk that balance,
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's what, and we even we got into that a little bit. The temptation, there's all kinds of temptations for Christians when it comes to politics, all sorts of things that you could go wrong in multifarious ways on this. He gets into, he told me about 3 different common misconceptions he sees around how Christians engage politics and political conversations.
Well, 3 things come to mind. And I think, maybe I know for myself, there are times I kind of dabble back and forth into these 3 spaces. I think one is when we choose to disengage from politics. I think when I was younger, I would tell myself, because I was told by other leaders, just focus on spiritual things, church, quiet time, Bible study, that was spiritual. And so engaging policies and politics was not spiritual and was of the world. And so I think there are folks, for whatever reason, it could be what I would consider a dangerous theology. Maybe they feel apathetic, maybe they're exhausted, and they've chosen to disengage altogether. And then there are those, I think, who have made, whether we can see it or not, it's become the most important thing. Our politics informs our theology, as opposed to our theology informing our politics. And I think when we care so much about politics, whether we know it or not, it can grow to become idolatrous. And so as a result, we see everything through those filters. We justify all of our actions based upon our political ideology. And then I think there's a third group of folks, and I think there are folks that are engaged in politics, but we have become byproducts of what I would call cultural Christianity, where it doesn't always parallel the life and the words and the sacrifice, the grace of Jesus Christ, but it has become its own entity, enamored by power, enamored by kind of willing things to be. And I think that's also very dangerous as well. I think preachers can be guilty of this. I think I can be guilty of it. Politicians can be guilty of it, where we dabble a little Jesus and sprinkle him on top of things. And as a result, I think there is a grave, it causes a grave, I think, disservice to the witness of Christ in our world. And I think we're seeing some of that. A lot of people are being disillusioned by the witness of the church, Christians in our world today.
So Jesse, between those three, the idea of thinking politics just don't matter at all, the idea of thinking they matter too much, that you get too invested in them and almost make them kind of an idol. And then that third one of kind of using a cultural Christianity as a cover for your own weird blend of religio-political beliefs. Which one do you feel like is the most prominent thing in the U.S. and we'll limit it to American politics?
I mean, personally, right now, it seems like that politics matter more than they do. Obviously, in a democracy, legislation impacts our lives, but sort of like the day-to-day kind of mudslinging, a lot of people, their day-to-day mood is affected by just the tone on social media when it comes to politics. Yeah. And I think it's important to have political conviction and to be willing to express ideas in a civil way that hopefully lead to positive changes, but also realizing at the end of the day, to have an impact, there are a lot other avenues that you can take than just being involved in politics.
Yeah, and that's the tension, right? It's easy to say politics don't matter. Why do you have to make everything political? It's easy to say politics matter too much. Why do we have to? Why? We've got to focus on and turn it into sort of the catch-all, fix-all to a lot of our current problems. Finding that balance is something that I think Eugene has done really well. The last thing I wanted to talk to him about, and this is a complicated one, I appreciate him being willing to walk within this one with me, is I think that most reasonable Christians, who I assume are most of our listeners, are convinced that the political parties are not the answer. The two-party system, God is not a Republican, God is not a Democrat, and we don't want our faith to be defined by these parties as well. But the temptation then is to say, well, we have to be practical and realistic. You can't just choose your policies piecemeal to align with your faith. You have to vote within the system that we've got. The system that we've got is Republican or Democrat. So we have to throw in our lot with one of those two parties and hope for the best. So I wanted to ask him how he felt about that. If the idea of trying to work outside of that system is just too idealistic and we need to be more practical and pragmatic. And I appreciated his willingness to engage in that complicated and obviously kind of controversial conversation.
I get that constantly as well. We're being unrealistic. And I think in many ways, when Jesus came and went about his life and ministry, I suspect that much of the criticism and pushback that he got was also, you're not being practical, pragmatic, this isn't realistic, and you've got to play with the system. And so I understand that there's a reality for us to engage real systems, real processes, the real mechanisms that exist. But I think the danger of that kind of comment is then to have an absolute defeatist, fatalistic perspective and just say, as a church, we're just victims of the larger machine in our world, and we just have to abide by it. And I don't think that is reflective of the kingdom of God. I think it's really dangerous. And while we seek to be practical, I think we also ought to be constantly mindful of Jesus, his words. When we're talking about Sermon on the Mount and Beatitudes being the ethics that form us. So I would rather.
That was Eugene Cho. His new book, Thou Shalt Not Be a Jerk, Christian's Guide to Engaging Politics, is out now. Thanks to Eugene, and congratulations again on your new position.
Has God put something in your heart to do, perhaps something bigger than just the normal routine of life, perhaps to build His kingdom and to advance His cause? My name is Jamie Dew. I'm the president of New Orleans Seminary and Level College. I want to encourage you to join us at the Towel and Basin podcast, where we take up all issues related to the kingdom. Go to nobts.edu/podcasts. Hope to see you there.
You're listening to Romantics by Fortet. Well, hey, I think with that, we will wrap it up. Many thanks to Eugene Cho. Thou Shalt Not Be a Jerk, A Christian's Guide to Engaging in Politics is out now. You can order it anyway. Also, thanks to HelloFresh. Go to www.hellofresh.com/relevant10. Use the code relevant10 for 10 free meals, including free shipping. Also, go to bombas.com/relevant today and get 20% off your first purchase. That's Bombas, BOMBAS.com/relevant for 20% off. Bombas.com/relevant. And a biggest thanks to Kristen. Kristen, thanks for joining us. I know this isn't easy to do. I know it's a tough time. I know you got kids home from school, but I really appreciate you being on here with your wisdom.
Thank you so much.
No, you gave me some human conversation in this very quiet day, so it was fun.
Carry that with you. Carry it with you.
Kristen, if it was just Tyler and I trying to ease our audience in the wake of the coronavirus, I would be very nervous. But you brought a great poise and wisdom to this conversation. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Your book, Rage Against the Minivan, is out on June 9th, and people can pre-order it now, right?
Yep.
And I give it my official endorsement. I have it in here so people can see.
Thank you.
I've been reading it. It's awesome.
I don't know why I didn't get a copy.
I requested 2 copies. I said, don't send Tyler one, send me 2. Send me 2. I hoard things. I said, send me 2 and send toilet paper. All right? None for Tyler.
Just don't use it as toilet paper, please.
That's right. And with that, hey, we'll wrap it up. I'm Tyler Huckabee.
I'm Jen the String.
I'm Jesse Carey.
I'm Kristen Howerton.
Have a great, safe weekend, everyone. We'll see you next week.
Thank you for listening to the Relevant Podcast. If you like what you heard, be sure to leave us a review on iTunes. Check out other shows from the Relevant Podcast Network in the podcast section at relevantmagazine.com. And while you're there, browse exclusive podcast merchandise at our online store. Make sure to subscribe to Relevant Magazine. Info is available at relevantmagazine.com/subscribe.
Sit him down with Coach for a while.
Relevant Podcast Network.
Time is precious, and so are our pets. So time with our pets is extra precious. That's why we started Dutch. Dutch provides 24/7 access to licensed vets with unlimited virtual visits and follow-ups for up to 5 pets. You can message a vet at any time and schedule a video visit the same day. Our vets can even prescribe medication for many ailments, and shipping is always free. With Dutch, you'll get more time with your pets and year-round peace of mind when it comes to their vet care. Go to Dutch.com to get vet care that is always there for just $92 a year.